Spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another fantastic edition of Real News, morning program edition style. I say that, Shine, because there's no telling when we could pop off and do one of these things at night, do one of these things in the middle of the day. It's Real News. Shine's grooving in the background, sunglasses, the cap, the whole deal, man. You don't know whether it's going to drive you to a destination or spit some hot commentary, because we spit hot fire on this program is what we do.
Or I may be your golf caddy. I mean, it could go either way. Hey, good morning, everybody.
How are you doing this morning, buddy?
Man, I feel great. I really do. I feel great. Maybe I can show it in the shot here. Got all these beautiful plants growing over here. Growing tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and all this stuff, and it's just my little space here is just full of life. I feel great.
That's what I'm talking about. We obviously have a jam-packed show for you on this day. Let me show you the first thing I think we're starting with here. Just a quick shot, quick image. That's right, Mr. President Trump himself. Boom, right there. A couple different stories we're getting here today. President Trump obviously is considering holding WHO funding. We're talking about the possibility for a third-party contender. In the day and age of the duopoly, Shine, is this such a thing where a third party could actually have a viable contender? We also talk about what the new normal looks like in this world of a post-corona, pre-coronavirus, all this other stuff going on. I say that because at the bottom of the show notes here, a really interesting question that was brought to me prior to the show this morning, brought to my attention yesterday is, all right, so what does the new normal actually look like then? Does the new normal, and let me just read this quote real quick so people could be marinating on it as I'm about to do the greatest audience in the nation appreciation check-in here. Here's the quote, though, coming from a Dr. William Hasseline. I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It doesn't matter. I'll get back to it in a second. Here's the quote, though, from a Fox News headline saying, beyond flattening the curve, here's how to end the pandemic. Quote, the only thing we know now that can reduce infections immediately is widespread testing, exhaustive contact tracing, and mandatory quarantine of all those known to be exposed, regardless of their testing results. I say that, Shine, just to keep everyone in sort of perspective here as we go through some of these other issues going on today. A large part of the conversation is held between sort of these two ideas right now, buddy. It's cool, we're getting around the curve, we're flattening that curve, great, fantastic stories, numbers are starting to look awesome, modeling projections are starting to look awesome, not necessarily sort of the dire apocalyptic scenarios we've been seeing recently. We went from 240,000, now we're talking like low 100s, 90s, mid 80s, even if we do this thing right, if we keep to our mitigating factors or whatever. So now that we're getting our head around this space a little bit, we're starting to get into the realm of like, okay. So now what do we do if this possibly comes back in the fall? What do we do for a second or a reintroduction phase? What is society looking like at that point? Are we talking vaccine? Because that's a year or year and a half out. Are we talking herd immunity, bro? Are we talking just reintroducing these back in society? What do we do about the economy when this stuff happens again? So I'll give Sean a chance to respond, but as he's responding here, if he wants to, let me go to the comment section. Everybody in Real News audience, greatest audience in the nation, appreciation. How you doing this morning? What do you need help with? How you been? Any businesses out there that are trying to, innovate, keep their businesses alive, bring them to our attention, bring your concerns to our attention. Let's this community help and heal and mold each other. As they're putting us in the comment section, Shine, how you doing this morning? What's on your mind? Where you want to go with?
Well, I mean, first of all, good morning to everybody. I hope everyone's having another great day. This is Real News 13, and it's Lucky 13. We're taking it back. We're taking back 13. We're going to make it lucky again. But I think this is all a very interesting conversation. I was watching the Maria Bartiromo show this morning, and there was a conversation exactly about what is in your show notes. By the way, everything we're talking about is in the description there on Facebook, and if you're on YouTube or Twitch, the whole thing is in there in the show notes, so you can follow along at home. But this conversation is very interesting, and I don't know necessarily if the talk you're having, that people are having of widespread testing, is more about that's the most effective way to keep numbers down, or is that the most effective way to build confidence to get people to get back out in the market? Like, would you feel better knowing that people probably, if they're at your job, they probably got tested negative within the past, blah 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 blah, and are not experiencing that
Right.
and any symptoms, and you could know that with confidence. See, that's the key. I don't know if this stuff, all these things you're hearing, Grant, are about health measures or about building confidence, or
Yeah.
if
Right.
or if those things are, I don't know if those things are exclusive either. They're kind of together. But I heard it more from a financial side, like get people back out in the markets, get people back together in groups, not being afraid to be in groups. How do you do that? You do that by verifying that everyone is, you give everybody a stamp. You're okay. So, interesting conversation. I'm glad people are having the conversations of how do we build the confidence right back right now. Hearing a lot of people trying to downplay the idea of even recession, let alone we were having depression talks 2 weeks ago, Grant, when we lost 10,000 points in the Dow. This morning the Dow is up, I think, almost 300 points, or at least it was half an hour ago.
Yeah.
And that
we were,
doesn't say anything about the future. Who knows what the future is going to bring? But we are on a roller coaster of kind of ideas and prognostications and even evaluations of the current situation.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the ongoing themes I think of real news, possibly this week and let's say going into next week as well. You've heard Shine and I sort of tease this story. Let me just show you real quick what we're talking about here. I'll share my screen with this in a second. You've heard us sort of tease this story. This is actually something my brother sent me, and I don't really know where it comes from, but it gets to the heart of what a little bit what we're talking about here. I think this is a Lenin quote. I'm pretty sure the idea that there's decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happens, right? And it's this idea of considering the old world versus the new world. And I don't want to get too much into the heart of this right now, but it's in the show notes if you want to check here. And it's just quick little blurbs that are comparing, sort of pre-coronavirus, being sheltered in place and post and all this stuff, right? And I think this goes a little bit to what China's talking about here in a minute of how do we have concern for economic outlooks? How do we have concern for people's genuine fear surrounding this situation? And what does that look like afterwards, right? Because we were even talking right before we came on air, like, look, man, some of these people are going to have to get back to work. But frankly, buddy, between you and me, I don't know. I think this stuff has shown a lot of people like you don't necessarily have to show up for some of these jobs to a physical building. In particular, I keep thinking about this restriction in Alabama that was lifted, and I'll verify that it's Alabama. I'm pretty certain it's Alabama, but several other states have done this to where, customer service lines, if you're doing customer service at home, you have, because of state restrictions, you have to be in an actual physical building. Some type of restrictions say because of, I don't really know the justification. I do know the justification is just not a great one, but you have to be in a physical building if you're doing customer service representation. And I'm thinking like, really, dude? Really? Because like there's all kind of technology where my supervisor can punch into my line. I'm talking theoretically here, that they could punch into my line while I'm doing customer service reviews or whatever, if they wanted to, and listen to any one of those calls. All those calls are recorded anyways. They can listen back afterwards. I don't necessarily have to be at a physical building for that to take place. I can just as easily do that from my home. I can save labor overhead. I can save costs for everyone else. I can, these climate change folks, man, they can calm down a little bit because a large portion of society will no longer be driving 30 to 40 minutes to get to their job, right? It seems like the point I'm making is I think that's a very small example of how after this situation, going back into reintroduction, a lot of businesses are going to start to think like, dude, we're much more sleek. We're much more able. We're much more ready to get back into this thing of actually, I don't know, saving some costs or something. Let's see here. Trace and Facebook just said Tyler Cowen works in Mercatus, funded by the Cokes. I think, did he just poke something? Post him? Oh, I think that's what he's talking about. Interesting. Okay, so this is what he was talking about. Tyler Cowen. This article that I just pulled up here. Let me just show this. Trace was actually just indicating this article that I just shared. This one. World 2.0, the 2 decades where nothing happens. Right, yeah. Tyler Cowen, he just said, let's see here. Where did that comment go? Yeah, it works at Mercatus, is funded by the Cokes, institute funded by the Cokes. So we'll go through that here in a second, man. Sean, if you want to give a chance to respond, though. But I'm telling you, I think there's a lot of things that are changing, a lot of things that we're going to see in the next couple of weeks here. They're going to look drastically different. One of those in particular is what I wanted to start this morning program with, dude, is Trump kind of coming out yesterday and saying, hey, dude, this World Health Organization, they got it wrong, man. They backed the wrong horse in this race. It's a little bit too China-centric, as Trump says. If you haven't heard this clip, I'll let Sean give a response to all that stuff we just ran on while I'm pulling the clip up here. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, no worries.
There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. But very, very interesting. I think the Trump administration was really leaping on an opportunity, not letting a good crisis go to waste by jumping in there and giving a real critique, the kind of critiques that our leaders and other leaders, I mean, anybody should have been giving the Chinese government for decades. Saying, I mean, in November, China knew about human-to-human transmission. You know what I mean? United States didn't know that. Not in November. And there's a number of instances like that. Like we were talking about the other day that the WHO guy, the actual WHO guy, wouldn't take even questions about Taiwan's response, which is overtly political stance for an international health organization to take. Like it's something that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Like, did they do anything that that worked? If they did, can you talk about it? I think it's a reasonable question. And the fact that they would be so afraid of Red China, that that he would hold back, I mean, it says a lot. It's just like those NBA players. But I think something that scares you a little bit is when you saw that NBA player stuff. What was it? The Houston Rockets? Was that who the general manager
Rockets,
was?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's just NBA players or it's just general managers. Well, what about when it's the head of the WHO? What about when it's people who make decisions that affect, life and death, or prosperity or poverty, or health or not health or unhealthy? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's corruption. I mean, when they should have been sharing information, they didn't. They weren't.
And obviously, you're seeing Trump right now on the backs of your screens. We're going to play this clip here in a second so everyone's up to speed on what we're talking about, the possibility of no longer funding, at least the American portion, no longer funding the World Health Organization. I would implore the audience, though, if you watch South Park, you don't have to watch South Park, but I bring up South Park a lot on this program, Sean, because I think they do some of the best social/political commentary, right? Their satire is stinging, man, and it's been typically some of the best in media out there as far as satire and political commentary is concerned. Man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know of a better version to go to right now. There's some that you can point to, but they get it right most times. Anyways, this last season in particular, when they're talking about everything that China's wrapped up in, the NBA scandal, how basically China at this point sort of owns Hollywood. You have to see this thing at a 30,000-foot view of more than just the WHO. You have to see this thing of how far-reaching sort of the Chinese tentacles are. It's a strange way to say it, but it's exactly what's going on. Listen to Trump right now so we can get some context. Shine, tell me if the audio is not working. Here's President Trump yesterday.
The WHO, that's the World Health Organization, receives vast amounts of money from the United States, and we pay for a majority, a biggest portion of their money. And they actually criticized and disagreed with my travel ban at the time I did it. And they were wrong. They've been wrong about a lot of things. And they had a lot of information early, and they didn't want to, they seem to be very China-centric. And we have to look into that. So we're going to look into it. We give a majority of the money that they get. And it's much more than the $58 million is a small portion of what they've gotten over the years. Sometimes they get much more than that. Sometimes it's for programs that they're doing, and it's much bigger numbers. And if the programs are good, that's great as far as we're concerned. But we want to look into it. World Health Organization, because they really are, they called it wrong. They called it wrong. They missed the call. They could have called it months earlier. They would have known. And they should have known, and they probably did know. So we'll be looking into that very carefully. And we're going to put
Grant, pause that for a second. Is it? I don't know if it's refreshing, weird, or scary.
Or all of them, right?
Or all of those things for someone to point out a government or non-government organization just missing the mark.
Yeah.
From another part of government in a way that is sincere, not a political virtue signaling. You know, like the way people say, oh, they can't even deliver the mail on time. You know, that's like anecdotal, memeable, whatever. This has nothing to do with that. This is not talk radio banter stuff, you know. This is the WHO. Yeah, they really didn't do a good job. It's not my fault. That's what I heard. That's what I heard him say anyway.
Just got it wrong. They missed the mark. And I love too where he just sort of like so casually. And that's one of the interesting things. And I'll use the word interesting here, Sean, because some people will say it's 3D chess. Some people will say it's brilliant. I don't know whether it's brilliant or not. I will say it's at least interesting. The way that Trump sort of casually stumbles backwards or casually sort of like hops down the stairs into wildly controversial statements that you wouldn't think are wildly controversial, right? So he started off by just sort of saying like, yeah, no, they just got it wrong. They backed the wrong horse. They just they missed the call on this one. It's like, okay, cool, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. They missed the call, and then he just sort of like casually introduces the idea of like, I don't know, maybe they didn't know about it, maybe they knew about it. They probably knew about it. They probably knew it was wrong from the very beginning. It's like, what just happened, bro? Like, what just happened? In a single sentence, we went from like, yeah, they probably just backed the wrong horse. They probably just had a misstatement. They probably just got a wrong cue to. Now they definitely knew about it, and they just straight didn't tell the rest of the world. We got a major problem here. See how casually that whole train just happened. And now for anybody that's watching, reporters included, because you'll hear some of these follow-up questions, reporters included, now all of a sudden they're stumbling in the back end of like, dude, maybe we shouldn't be back in these major organizations, right? Maybe the American money should actually have a little bit more test and virtue and a little bit more vetting process in behind of like, what are we actually throwing these tens of millions, if not billions of dollars to every single year? And especially when it comes to something like the WHO, if you don't know what Trump is talking about, this China-centric coverage that the WHO is leaning towards, we have some of those clips pulled up here in just a second where a Taiwanese reporter was asking a WHO leader from Canada, I'm just teasing it right now, I'll play the whole clip here in a second, was asking WHO leader from Canada, what do you think about the way Taiwan has handled this? And he just straight didn't answer the question. Not only did he not answer the question, he paused for 10 seconds, dropped the call. They had to call him back, and then when they asked him again, he was like, yeah, China's getting it right. I prefer to have this. If I had the disease, I'd prefer to have it over or the virus. If I had it, I'd prefer to have it over in China, and then just ended the call. It's a very strange thing, but that's one of the ways that Trump sort of has this 3D chess, or call it interesting, call it whatever term you want to. He just casually stumbles into wildly controversial statements, but the way he goes about doing it, it doesn't seem so wildly controversial, because a small part of you, whether you agree with him or not, a small part of you thinks like, man, that might be at least a little bit true. Did the WHO actually know there was a major problem here, and did they just not tell anybody about it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know what's weirder, calling out the WHO for either bias or willful ignorance, whatever he was accusing them of, or the fact that he was talking about looking at their funding. Like, his controversial statement buried the lead. I mean, that's what's so funny about it, Grant. The thing that we were focused on there because we thought it was funny, that doesn't mean anything except for like today's news cycle. But if WHO ultimately ends up losing tens of millions of dollars over the years because of this, like we pull back or lessen the amount of incremental increase, you get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's what matters. That's what's so weird about his delivery style. The thing that's controversial is actually burying the lead. The lead is what's funny is the controversial thing he said was a justification. He was like explaining why they're looking at the money in a similar justification to NATO. When they said, okay, here's the service we're getting, here's how much we're paying for it, I'm in charge of the government, are we getting a good deal? Now, I know it's not that simple, and I know that a good deal is subjective to everyone, and not everyone agrees what a good deal is. But the fact that that's how people, or how he and by extension other people in our executive branch are looking at government, makes me feel good. It's less controversial for me than it is like, wow, you're really virtue signaling the way I want government to run. I don't know if that's actually how it's running, but it sounds good.
Let me play a few more clips from Trump here just to drive this point home.
To the WHO, we're going to put a very powerful hold on it, and we're going to see. It's a great thing if it works, but when they call every shot wrong, that's no good.
You talked a lot about the WHO, and I was wondering, Dr. Fauci had discussed them earlier, so if I could ask you a question about...
Well, he respects the WHO, and I think that's good, and he's worked with them for a long time. But they did give us some pretty bad play calling.
They've also, I think, given lots of countries in the world accurate coronavirus testing that's been central to your guys' data modeling. And so
that I don't know. I can only say that with regard to us, they're taking a lot of heat because they didn't want the borders closed. They called it wrong. They really called, I would say, every aspect of it wrong.
So
until
the funding freeze.
I'm not happy about it. Look, we fund it. Take a look. I mean, go through step by step. They said there's no big deal, there's no big problem, there's no nothing. And then ultimately, when I closed it down, they actually said that I made a mistake in closing it down, and it turned out to be right. But at the time, they did that. So we're just going to take a look at it. We fund it, and they seem to be, I said recently in social media, I said they seem to be very China-centric. That's a nice way of saying it, but they seem to be very China-centric. And they seem to err always on the side of China. And we fund it, so I want to look into it. Yes, please.
Thanks. A quick follow-up on that. So is the time to free WHO during a pandemic?
No, maybe not. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but we're going to look at it.
You did say that.
We give a tremendous no, I didn't. I said we're going to look at it.
As I pull up this next clip, right? It's that, yeah, man. Right? And it's the idea of the threat behind that lack of funding is sort of a perpetual leverage, if you will, right? And that's, I think, the way that Trump is always looking at some of these things. And again, I'm not trying to play 3D chess for him. I'm not even trying to ingratiate myself to Trump supporters here necessarily. All I'm really trying to do is just think as a businessman would. I can throw out this idea that all of a sudden we're going to stop funding for the WHO. And then when I start receiving some response from that, as if I've sort of chummed the waters or done like an instantaneous poll, if you will, now all of a sudden I start to say like, okay, cool. So that's actually riled up some concerns. Now there's a bit of fear or sense in the room that maybe the WHO is not the world standard on how this stuff operates. Maybe it's a case-by-case basis upon how each country operates individually, their capacity in the healthcare system, the willingness of their citizens to respond. I mean, maybe it's a situation like that. Maybe the WHO doesn't need all of our stuff. And maybe at the same time, what ends up happening here is I can actually use that as a massive piece of leverage going forward to give myself some more power, to give myself some more direction as to, hey, for America and Americans' concerns, maybe they should start to be looking towards our people, towards our direction. And maybe there's a much bigger aspect at play here when it comes to the WHO. when it comes to the control of the Chinese control of the WHO. Maybe there's a much bigger aspect at play here for some of the 5G technology we talked about yesterday. And I'm not speaking in the world of conspiracies. Calm down for a second. I'm talking what we brought up yesterday, this 5G build out that's about to happen, the next information age. There's a major backplay of all of this stuff. The backstop is the story, Shine. Get what I'm saying? The backboard of this story behind my head here in big like air traffic controller arm waves, that is the story. The WHO is the small little ball that's being pinged off that massive backboard right now. And I think that's what Trump is trying to show. To give some context as to what Trump is talking about, just so you think he's not completely shooting off the hip here. This is a bit of the story that everybody's talking about. This is a bit of the story that Shine brought up before. This is channel 152. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I think this is a Canada organization. Don't quote me on that. This is in part what they're talking about. This is a Taiwanese reporter interviewing a Canadian head of the WHO. Just listen to this response.
A senior WHO official has raised hackles in Taiwan by appearing to dodge questions about Taiwan's exclusion from the World Health Body. During an interview via video chat with a Hong Kong media outlet, Bruce Aylward, a Canadian epidemiologist, remained silent for about 10 seconds when asked if the WHO should reconsider Taiwan's membership. After their video hookup appeared to be disconnected, the interviewer called him back. This time, Aylward declared that if he had contracted the coronavirus, he would want to be treated in China.
WHO considered Taiwan's membership.
Like that bird across the screen, like dot dot dot.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, am I being punked?
Let's move to another one then.
Aylward was asked about Taiwan. He stalled for close to 10 seconds and avoided a reporter's question. But the reporter persisted.
I'm actually curious on talking about Taiwan as well, on Taiwan's case.
All right, now see, that for me, all right, and I'll cut to where he goes back to where they get it back on the line here in just a second. Now that for me, let me play that back again, because maybe I'm just reading in this too much on. To me, anytime I end a Skype call or a Zoom call, I'm looking down at my screen and I make a clear body gesture with my shoulders to show like, I'm clicking on something, and it's highly likely I'm clicking on the in meeting screen, right? So I don't know, tell me.
Taiwan's case.
Am I wrong there, dude? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to read into this too much, but that's obviously what it looks like right there. Is that
he is clearly.
We decided to give Dr. Howard another call to follow up.
And I just want to see if you can comment a bit on how Taiwan has done so far in terms of containing the virus.
Well, we've already talked about China.
Aylward is an assistant director general
of the... again, if we want a bit better context for it, or maybe it doesn't necessarily matter. But you get what I'm saying, Sean, right? And when you ask, can you respond to how Taiwan is handling this? Well, we've already talked about China, right? We've already talked about China. When you're asking me about the Taiwanese response to the situation, and then there's a subtle shoulder shift, if you will, to what looks like a hit in meeting button, because I just don't want to take that response of a question. It's like, dude, I think that's again a small example, a little bit of what Trump is talking about here. Is like, come on, dude, come on. I mean, you don't have to be good at this game to realize that's probably not the best way to handle that situation.
Absolutely not. I mean, that's appalling. I mean, he obviously has a big crush on Winnie the Pooh, which that's what everybody calls the leader of China. Winnie the Pooh's banned there, actually, because of that. But that was a disgusting display. And like I said, put it in the context of how you felt when you saw NBA players do it. Which, not that it's inconsequential because they're NBA players. It's not. They're the marketing face of multi-billion-dollar corporations with multi-billion-dollar corporations sponsoring that corporation. You know, so I mean, that's a big deal. But this is the head of the WHO, or a head of the WHO. This is a guy making decisions, senior official, a guy making decisions theoretically that involve life and death. And I don't know, I don't have a scientific background. I'm sure some people out there do. But I know for some reason that's the thing that bothers me so much is there's an obvious bias there. And if he allows for that kind of bias in that space where it's very important, I mean, the public representation of things, when you're the head of an organization, if he's willing to represent himself that way, and that way, how can you trust anything from the WHO?
Well, and Sean, I think another thing this is doing, buddy, is exactly what you're saying. Not only how can you trust anything from the WHO, but in general, there is much less to hide behind during these points of crisis. And let me explain it this way, okay? Once you start, as we've been saying on this program, buddy, once you start to focus on progress and growth and survival, you start to burn off some of those things that you don't need anymore. And as you do, your ability to become invisible, your ability to hide behind some facade, some fake veneer, becomes less and less, right? So the WHO is facing this problem right now, baby, because there's not all this like distracting stimuli going around everywhere to just like, look at this shiny ball, look at this shiny ball. Now you have to focus on the situation at hand, okay? We're seeing what's going on. Another story that's in the show notes right now, we're seeing what's going on with Alyssa Milano. Alyssa Milano was one of the main people that was up there talking about how Brett Kavanaugh should not be in the Supreme Court because of these wildly salacious rumors. Let's call them what they were, rumors, because there was no backing at all. No backing at all. In 2 days, Brett Kavanaugh went from a guy that may have done something, I don't know, nefarious at a party to a serial rapist, bro. It was absolutely asinine. It was absurd. Beyond asinine, man. But this is the lady that was backing all that. She was the one that was making these scowls behind Kavanaugh the entire time while those hearings were going on. Now, all of a sudden, you see her coming out and not sort of remaining mum on the whole Joe Biden accusations. And she is getting eviscerated on Twitter, bro.
She did a public endorsement on Twitter last Friday or something like that. She did a public endorsement, mentioned nothing about his Me Too problems with minors, by the way. You know, his Me Too weird public touching that he does and other stuff. I mean, wasn't there recently a former campaign staffer who said, who accused him? She got raked over the coals for being a Me Too hypocrite.
Well, and she's sticking to it, buddy. I mean, like, here's her response right now. Everyone can see this, okay? And this is the story that Shine's
Well, it's a
about.
little blurry, so just make sure you read it out loud.
Yeah, I'm going to read it out loud for him. Hopefully it'll come through on some of these people's screen. But in 1993, or at least this allegedly happened in 93, Joe Biden has now been being accused as to from one of his campaign staffers. I think it was one of his Senate staffers. Doesn't matter. He's being accused right now that in 1993 there was a sexual assault allegation, or at least a sexual harassment allegation. I'll have to look into that some more. There's a Fox News headline about that linked in the article in the show notes here. But Alyssa Milano's response to this whole thing is right now. This came out yesterday, where she's saying you can't tell the difference. You cannot tell the difference between Trump supporters and Bernie supporters in my replies right now. Cancel culture does not scare me. People have been trying to cancel me since the 80s. Keep showing your true colors. I'll be right here where I've always been fighting for you. Like, who is she appealing to? Alyssa Milano can't even figure out how to navigate these new waters of what the new normal is, of this exposed new world where you cannot hide behind fakeness. You cannot hide behind, these veneers anymore, buddy. Virtue signaling.
You can't hide behind ideological virtue signaling.
Yes, man.
You can't walk into a room.
Thing that represents.
You can't walk into a room and say, you know what? I'm a good Republican. I like low taxes, less government, and I'm pro-life. People are going to be like, and? That was 15 years ago. What do you got now? Not that those things aren't important. Those things are super important. But it's like, can you do more than prattle off some buzzwords? Can you talk about it? Can you think about it? And it's very similar with Democrats. And then there's crossover with things like protectionism, wanting to buy America first or something, or lowering the amount of immigrants coming in, or the opposite of that. Those things cross over parties, and it is a confusing space. But I think I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's confusing for Melissa Milano or people who are responding to her. I think what they're responding to has nothing to do with politics. It's just it's holding her accountable for words she's used in the past and stances she's taken in the past that only have to do with politics because they were commentary on a political situation. They were just commentary. It could have been on another kind of situation. They were just holding her accountable for her words. There's no confusion there.
And what I'm really hoping is going to come out of this, at least something that will come out of this, is exactly what you're talking about, okay? Is the burning off of the cult of personality. dude, like, I really am not about it. I can't get behind it, right? Like, I really just do not like the idea that because a certain person said something, all of a sudden that should be taken as valid or worthy just because a certain individual said it. Maybe that's not the best way to put it. Certain individuals saying something should at least be heard out as opposed to others. What I'm saying is, if Alexander Cortez backs something, don't back it just because Alexander Cortez backs it. It borders on logical fallacy if it's not a pure logical fallacy of an appeal to authority. What I'm saying is I'm hoping as we come out of this area, as we come out of this situation, we'll start to see more of these Alyssa Milano situations where it's not even the cancel culture anymore, right? It's not even the cancel culture of these wars back and forth, because that's what cancel culture had become, tribalistic in a sense. You got one of ours, so I'm going to go get one of yours type thing. Like, it'd become a tit for tat type situation. I'm hoping what it'll become is a situation for Alyssa Milano where when she says you can't tell the difference between Trump supporters and Bernie supporters in my replies right now, it's like, whose team are you playing for, Alyssa? Like, you're really sold out for this election thing right now, right? Like, you are so sold out for this election thing right now. You're not really even envisioning your A-list / B-list Hollywood existence after this election. Is that what you're going for right now? Because that's what I'm saying, buddy. It's getting exceedingly difficult. It's becoming exceedingly difficult for other people to navigate the waters of the new normal in this new world of what is going to be taken as truth and what's not going to be taken as truth. I think people are just kind of fed up with it, man. I think that's what crisis has a tendency to do to some people. It's like, I'm done with it, dude. I'm done with all of it. I'm done with the media spin. I'm done with being afraid of everything all the time. I'm done with nonsensical trash just filling my inlines, filling my timelines all the time. Just give me something objective that I can hold on to, that I can trust and believe in. And if it's not that, I don't want it. I don't want it. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to be that way. I would prefer for it to be that way, Shine, but at least for the next little while, man. I mean, I'm telling you, I think this is a great story to show and possibly lead into the next story we're going to talk about. Of like, dude, is this the time for an introduction of a third party? I don't know, man. Mm-hmm. Hey, and Sean, I don't think we can hear you right now, man. I'll let Sean get that mic situation taken care of. Or at least somebody on Facebook was telling me that we couldn't hear you right now. But I think what Sean was talking about too is going into this question of are we looking towards the day and age now where we're going to be entering a time of a viable third party? You heard us talk yesterday about there's regulatory restrictions that were being removed, right, across all the country, not just at the FDA, CDC level, man. I'm talking state level and on down, talking about 117 regulations that have been removed to help us during this crisis. And a lot of people, we were saying yesterday, that was seemingly pointing towards some type of bipartisan agreement. Okay, some we were saying it's a telltale sign of cooperation in the parties. And I'm stepping back a little bit here, buddy, and questioning. I don't know if that's, and I'm genuinely questioning this. This is not even necessarily rhetorical at this point, because I don't have a point to prove here. I'm actually in the point, Mr. Henry here with my objective Mr. Henry hat on. I'm genuinely asking right now. Facebook, let me know if you can hear me. I just got a message from Richard, one of our great real news guys, saying no audio at all. So they may not be able to hear me. It may be a Facebook problem, Shine, but we'll get on that. I'll keep going as if people can hear me. Anyways, I'm genuinely questioning right now whether this is the day and age where the duopoly is no longer preferable. The duopoly is no longer the necessary choice. And what I mean by the duopoly is that necessary choice of the lesser of two evils between Democrat and Republican. All right. Even the CC didn't pick it up. I'm not sure what that means. Closed caption didn't pick it up. Looks like they're getting me. I'm not sure, Sean. Yeah. Okay, good to go. Good to go. So what I mean is like that duopoly, the choice between Democrat and Republican. And here's the headline that I'm talking about a little bit. If you guys want to follow along at home, it's a great piece by Reason that basically just straight up asked that question. Coronavirus reveals utter sameness of Democrats and Republicans. the utter sameness of Democrats and Republicans. So it's an interesting situation, buddy, because some people are saying that what we were talking about yesterday of the deregulations, we're showing a bipartisan agreement to get over the hill to work through this controversy, whereas Reason.com is basically saying, no, dude, that's just showing that the parties had no difference to begin with. Now, importantly, what they're talking about is that libertarians keep saying that there are very few meaningful differences between Republicans and Democrats. And one of the many things revealed, at least by the political response, so says Reason here, I'm reading from the article, one of the things revealed by this political response in this pandemic is that there are very few meaningful differences between the two parties. You can see this in the $2 trillion CARES Act, obviously the largest spending bill in U.S. history, passed with a vote of 96-0. All right, so 96 yes votes to 0 no votes in the Senate. Now, 4 of those senators obviously couldn't attend. And afterwards, Representative Thomas Mastie, he was interviewed and said that he tried to instigate a conventional record vote on the measure. Now, the House passed this on a voice vote so that individual members did not have to go on the record either supporting it or not supporting it. That was something on which the top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, and the Republican Kevin McCarthy joined forces. Now, as Massey told this person that was being the interviewer on Reason said that they did that to shield current members from having to explain their votes during these fall's elections coming up. They didn't want to answer for it one way or another. They just wanted the money to be there. And if it's a good thing, it's awesome. If it's not a good thing, then they can always go back and say, I would have voted no if they would have had a voice vote. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a perfect sort of have your cake and eat it too type scenario. Now, one of the dissenters in this situation, as you've seen him do recently for a number of things, Representative Justin Amash, right? Justin Amash, the Michigan representative who recently left the Republican Party and has now become independent. This happened last summer because he felt that, or so he says, the Republican Party no longer represents his libertarianish philosophies, as Reason calls it, right? On Friday, Amash, who consistently criticized the CARES Act for giving the lion's share of the money to corporations and other special interests rather than individuals, he officially submitted a no vote. And actually, let me go to this portion of the article here now so everyone can read along with me. This is the response that he got from officially submitting a no vote. And it brings up a very, very interesting line of conversation, buddy, as to, are we in the day and age of bipartisan support, of cooperation, or are we just finally revealing that there's no difference? Just like we revealed that the WHO has some problems with their connections to China that we need to figure out, has some problems with their gross amount of overspending that it cannot account for, has some problems with some potential corruption. Just like we said that Alyssa Milano now has some problems with not being able to hide behind something that she did before. Is this one of those other things that's being revealed that, look, man, maybe the status quo Democrat and Republican parties, maybe they're not that different. Maybe we genuinely need to start considering some different ideas or different parties. Here are the two responses he got after officially submitting his no vote. Here are the two tweets posted yesterday afternoon. This story was from a couple days back, so timeline's not accurate here. But from the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, DCCC, the official campaign are the Democrats in the House of Representatives. This is where their first response. Congressman Justin Amash officially submitted his no vote in the congressional record on the bipartisan coronavirus relief bill that puts #families first amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Another response was this one right here. During a national crisis, it's unfortunate that Congressman Justin Amash would once again adhere to an extreme out-of-touch ideology, even when it means risking the health, well-being, and economic security of thousands. Okay, so now pause for a second. 30 minutes later, the National Republican Congressional Committee, NRCC, this is a political committee devoted to increasing the number of Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives, they posted these two tweets 30 minutes after the 30 minutes after the DCCC posted their two tweets. Here's the Republican response, right? Congressman Justin Amash officially submitted his no vote in the congressional record on bipartisan coronavirus relief bill that puts #families first amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Oddly similar to this one up right here, if not a copy and paste of it. And then going down here, again, during a national crisis, it's unfortunate that Congressman Justin Amash would once again work against President Trump, even when it means risking the health, well-being, and economic security of thousands. Basically the same exact thing up here, except for the word President Trump in it, bro. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, let me pause for a second and say this right now before I get too much into this, okay? Obviously, Trump, I just called Shine Trump. Obviously, Shine, there's much greater variables at play here, okay? The idea of messaging at a top-down level is something that is so intricate, it's so tested, it has so many think tanks behind it. You can't just take a single example of a Democrat committee organization, Republican organization, tweeting the same messaging, and all of a sudden thinking that's I don't know, the carte blanche example of what you need to say that Democrats and Republicans are the exact same party. You can't use it. It has to be more than, you know, just a case-by-case basis type thing, okay? So I get that. I understand that. These people come together, they understand what messaging works, and they might have even said, hey, by the way, this is something that we do need bipartisan support on, that we do need to show some type of cooperation on. So in so doing, let's take a collective approach to go talk about that guy. Let's take a collective approach to solidify in that sense of solidarity, to show that we are working in bipartisan support, to show that that one guy that's not supporting us right now, that's who we're attacking. But I will say, buddy, it does bring up an interesting idea, an interesting conversation of what Justin Amash is talking about when he responds to all this situation and says, hey, there's about as much independent thinking here as there is in Congress. He obviously tweeted this together. As you can see, he's showing the responses from both sides here saying, this is not an example of independent thinking. This is not an example of Democrats and Republicans being different parties, of standing for different things, of representing different ideologies, of one being fiscally responsible and fiscally conservative, and the other one being socially open to. There's no difference in these parties. There's no difference in the way that they approach these things. There's no difference in the way they take the conversations. Let me know how you're feeling about this in the Facebook comment section, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up yesterday, and one of the reasons why it's interesting to bring up this tweet right now that I'll get to here in just a second that's showing, let me actually share this screen. Again, take this tweet with a massive dose of salt, a big old grain of salt here. But hopefully you can see some of these same polling numbers that I'm showing right now. If that's a little bit blurry on your screen, I'll just read it for you. This is UX Politics poll. I don't even know what this is, bro. I don't know how legitimate this is. I don't know if it means nothing at all. It probably means nothing at all because, as you can see at the bottom, 60.6% of the people that responded to this poll said they'd vote for Bernie Sanders. So there's your grain of salt. But nevertheless, the second response was a vermin supreme. Now, what that says to me, buddy, is that the independents and the libertarians are sort of falling on the same page. Now, maybe it's always been that way, right? Maybe that's a little bit what happened the last time around, is that these Bernie bros found themselves to be much more aligned with the libertarian philosophy than they probably were with the current Republican philosophy. But the best version they had was a Donald Trump. So maybe they voted for Donald Trump. I don't know. And let me just ask that to Real News audience. Is this poll showing you guys anything different? Is the previous article that I just covered from Reason and the response to Justin Amash, the fact that two tweets in a row, 30 minutes apart from each other, one from a Democrat organization, the other from a Republican organization, does that show you anything at all, that they're the exact same responses to an individual that, in my opinion, y'all, love or hate Justin Amash, go look at his record, okay? Go look at his scorecards. The guy is virtually 97% and above on every major liberty issue he has ever voted on. Guy is an A+++ candidate, man. He is the guy that gets it right every single time when it comes to liberty issues. Every single time when it comes to the formulation of the foundation of this country. These original precepts that founded life, liberty, and property. Yes, we know it's the pursuit of happiness, but the life, liberty, and property aspect, man, that Fourth Amendment aspect, that is Justin Amash, right? So when he's getting kickback right now, that's the question I'm asking the audience in the comments. Is this doing anything for y'all? Is this shaping your worldview in a different way at all? Are you seeing the tides changing? Are you seeing people starting to give up on the cult of personality? Is there less things to hide behind? And as we have less things to hide behind, and we're starting to realize, man, like maybe the truth of some of these political ideologies can finally come to the surface, bro. Maybe we're weeding out the wheat from the chaff type thing, bro. I don't know. I'm getting a little bit excited, as you can hear, Shine, but let me kick it to you, maybe for some reaction, maybe some comments that you're seeing out there. I don't know. I'm genuinely asking, and I'm fingers crossed here, buddy, a little bit hopeful, just a little bit hopeful that what I originally said on this program, part of what I originally hoped Trump could do is shake the system up. Literally create a shockwave in the system so that when people finally become aware, like we're in this fog, this confusion, this slow slumber we've been stuck in for such a long time, when we finally wake up to this thing, bro, we might start looking around and thinking like, what just happened? What just happened right now? And maybe I need to start focusing less and less on a single individual. And I possibly might need to start focusing on some of this policy, bro, because the first time that Trump came out and said, and I always love to go to this example because it's my favorite one. I think it holds true the whole time. When Trump came out and essentially said, I'm only slightly paraphrasing here, The reason why we're not in Syria anymore is because they don't have anything we want. Everyone thought to a second, like, what a gaffe, what a foot and mouth moment for President Trump. No, not at all. That was Trump setting the standard at that point for saying, this is what's happening, by the way, with your American foreign intervention, your American foreign military policy. If you don't like the military industrial complex, I'm sorry. It is what it is. If they don't have stuff we need, if they don't have a bunch of oil, if it's not a strategic place that we need to have troops in, I'm not getting in there because it's a bad business decision. Once people are awakened, you shake them into that realization of like, dude, that is real. That's the reality. Now we can start having a real conversation about foreign policy again. And again, that's a small example of what I hope Trump had done. You couple that with the fact that it's a reality TV program now. Jefferson said we don't have a democracy. We have a democracy of those that participate. More people are participating now more than ever. We're finally able to have legitimate conversations. Maybe these two things coalescing is what we're seeing in some of the articles I just covered, man. I don't know. I've been rambling, Sean. I'll kick it to you for a response if you want.
Well, I'm even though I agree that the political landscape is unique and it is epoch forming and epoch changing, like it's a different political time now than it was a couple years ago, and it's way different than it was 6 or 7 years ago. Our current politics, parties are taking positions from the other party and modifying it to their bases. So there's, like I said earlier, there's crossover. And there are new issues. I think there are new realities. There's new practical problems. I mean, we're driving a big ship here. Millions of people, the largest government ever created by mankind. As far as wealth and all that stuff and value. There's new struggles, new trials, and those require new solutions. And those new solutions are not going to be because they're needed, they're not going to be in the sole ownership of the individual who came up with them or the political party that came up with them. And I think something that's important is we talked about, institutional bias, cult of personality bias that people have either for or against certain people. Something important to remember when you think about all that is people don't have ideas. This is a quote from somebody I really like, Jordan Peterson. People don't have ideas. Ideas have people. What ideas have you, But I think some of the people who've had success in today's political climate have articulated ideas that the general populace is having in a way that they can accept, and then providing new solutions to novel problems. And this situation where with the coronavirus is like it's endemic of what it's like, taking everything that's been happening and condensing it down to a moment where there's a new reality. We need new ideas. We need solutions. We don't need virtue signaling. We don't need people to throw out stuff that reminds them of the old victories. We need real solutions to save people's lives, or real solutions to make some money, or real solutions to run the institution of government better, or to whatever. We don't need virtue signaling. And I think virtue, and I wish there was a better word, because that phrase has kind of gotten played out, Mr. Henry, virtue signaling. But I feel like that was the politics of the 90s and early 2000s, was a bunch of virtue signaling. And it was a lot more about signaling to ideas. People call it political red meat. It was a lot more about signaling ideas than it was expressing solutions. And we were often caught flat-footed on some of the more novel problems, like 9/11. That was a novel, or like a new, unexpected situation. Some unexpected chaos, and we were caught a little flat-footed, and then we overcompensated after that because we were flat-footed, just like you would be in your own life if you were caught off guard. So I think we have a little bit better footing. I think people are a little bit more engaged because they're not accepting virtue signaling. You have to go further than that. You can't just throw out a red meat or blue meat. Ew, blue meat. But you can't just you can't just throw something out like that and get street cred anymore.
Right.
Even with people that are like apolitical. I mean, go talk to people who had not voted before a month ago here in Tennessee, but decided to be Bernie fans 6 months ago. You know, those people, you can't even virtue signal around them, a lot of them anyway. Like even those people that you would think, are just banned. I'm not to disparage an ideology or an individual. I'm just saying, like, if there's a bandwagon campaign in 2020, it's the Bernie Sanders campaign. Nobody,
sure, yeah,
nobody is trying. Nobody was a fan of Pete Buttigieg because they thought he was cool. They were the only cult of personality besides Trump, I guess, was Bernie Sanders. But it's very interesting, but I am pessimistic about a third party like the Libertarian Party. I think it's much more likely that they'll have a bigger influence to play, but it's because they're articulating solutions to current problems. But a lot of times their solutions get co-opted by the Republicans or the Democrats, and they don't get the credit.
Right.
Or the idea gets developed by other people. But it's all very interesting.
Yeah, that's actually my only real concern about this graphic that I just threw back up here of the U.S. politics polls. And again, I have no clue what that political poll is. It's probably not a legitimate one. It's just worth starting the conversation about, though. My only real concern about this for the Libertarian Party is that Vermin Supreme has become their sort of de facto. I don't even know if it's their legitimate candidate yet. I don't think they've had their primaries. I sound terrible for not knowing this, buddy, but I'm pretty sure they haven't actually chosen who their candidate's going to be yet. Nevertheless, Vermin Supreme, man, is the guy that is a little bit, I think, what China was just touching on here. The Vermin Supreme is the guy that wears the massive boot on his head, right? And he sort of just makes a mockery of the entire system for a very clear reason. His satire is so... It's a little bit of a good way to put it, right? But his satire is so stinging and so pointed that the reason why he's doing that is to point out the flaws and the faults in the system that we currently have. He walks around as literally just a walking ridiculous, boot wearing type thing, just to show like this is the system y'all believe in, by the way. And he talks about giving out free ponies to everyone. And he pick your color of your pony, and he's doing it just to make a mockery of, like, if you think my stuff that I'm presenting is any different than what you're currently buying into, you have bought into the illusion. Okay, you are so deluded that you have no clue as to what's actually happening in your current political system, because what I'm talking about is as realistic, or at least the same versions of realism as what you're talking about. Now, here's my thing. No one's going to take that seriously, or at least serious people are not going to take that seriously, whether he's correct or not. And I personally think him drawing those types of comparisons is a fantastic thing to do. But if you can't get someone out there that's not going to take the game seriously, then other people are not going to take you seriously, because you've been asked not to be taken seriously. You know what I'm saying, buddy? Yeah, Zach says in comment section here that we choose at the convention, so that obviously is going to happen sometime in the future. But I'm saying this is a little bit of my opinion. This is a bit of the opinions that I'm hearing from other people. When it comes down to someone like a Vermin Supreme or something, if that so happens to be the candidate, if you have told the rest of the people out there, of the voting populace, like, hey, don't take this seriously, we're just making a big mockery of the system, it's all just one sort of like massive charade, or we're just playing games here. Well, then everyone's going to take you at your word that you should just be playing games. That's basically all that you should have. You know what I'm saying? Well, so I guess what I'm saying is, the last thing I'll say on that is basically, I don't know if the Libertarians are actually going to choose him at all right now, but I would if I had any word of caution to the Libertarian Party, it would be that, hey, I know it sucks, man. It's really it's tough. I hate the duopoly as much as everyone else, but if you're going to become anything more than just a fantastic philosophy club, you have to start taking yourself seriously as a political party too. And I'm not a libertarian, so this is a difficult thing to hear from a big L party libertarian. So if you're a libertarian listening or watching, this is a difficult thing to hear. I would hope that y'all are having some of those same conversations amongst yourselves in the party, though. To be taken seriously in a political environment, and I speak from some expertise on this because I do it for a living, y'all, right? To be taken seriously in a political environment with political parties at play, whether you love it or hate it, and I hate it as much as everyone else, you have to take yourself seriously as a political party. And if you don't, then other people will not take you seriously, and other people don't want to waste their vote on something that they think they're just throwing it away on. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
It's fair enough, and I guess a fair critique. I think I've been around people of all kinds of political persuasions where that's a fair critique, but it's probably a fair critique. But I will say this on your original point: is there room for different and varied voices in American politics right now? More than ever. And I'll say this: you said, you basically told me not to pay attention to your campaign. Well, that's what you did before coronavirus. And everything before coronavirus, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about it, but in the cultural sense, there will be a before coronavirus and after coronavirus. I mean, the Democratic Party has already postponed their convention. The Democratic Party has already talked about undermining their current primary process, and like maybe we bring in the New York governor and let him run for president because he's done so good on television. So like there's a lot of things in flux, and it's one of the first times it's been moved in a long time like that, where it's been delayed like that. It's always been it's like a month before the party in power's convention. So there's a lot of tradition there that's been upended. But I think in general, like I said, there's novel circumstances that require solutions now. You don't get to virtue signal. You don't get to be a Republican and say, we got to do it like Reagan said to do it. That will not work right now. You don't get to be a Democrat and say we need to do it like FDR did it. You don't get to do that in today's world, because the problems are real and we need solutions now. In that world, varied voices can have a disproportionate effect, larger than they normally would. And we were saying when we first started this show, these next few months are important, because we will essentially, I think it's going to be fine, but we will essentially be like rebooting the world back up. With like we shut down the computer and we're cranking it back up, and when we do that, like there's opportunity for new software, there's opportunity for new debates, there's opportunity for new voices and new answers. And I don't know, crisis has a way of doing that, but so does time. And I think and I think we've had both those confluence of things happen over the past decade or so, peaking right now.
Yeah. And as we're getting to the end of the show here, it's 2 right now, so we'll be wrapping this up. I'll point people to one thing, if you will. It's this headline. Let me just make sure I have this pulled up here. Hang on a second. It's this headline. It's in the show notes right now, especially as it pertains to our people out in the East Tennessee area. Here we go. Tennessee article. Yeah, it's Tennessean. I get it, but whatever. It does a pretty good job of breaking down who's running for which statewide, federal, and legislative offices in 2020. I mean, it's talking everything: U.S. Senate congressional races, U.S. congressional races as well. We're talking state Senate races. We're talking state House races, all this stuff, man. And again, especially as it pertains to what we just talked about, considering new candidates, considering new ideas, considering new ways of thinking, all this stuff. In particular for that East Tennessee area, there are a lot of what I would call liberty champions that are really going to need some help. Those seats are going to need to be filled by some great liberty champions, okay? I mean, you're talking about Bill Dunn is no longer running anymore. Martin Daniel, buddy, I mean, goodness gracious, dude. I cannot say enough about Representative Daniel. That guy has been a champion for causes. I'm still daily figuring out things that he has run in the past or that he's currently running that I'm thinking, like, why did I not know about this? First of all, why did I not know this is a problem? Secondly, why did I not know he's ran something like this in the past? And third, why did I not know that it's continuing going up? I mean, all kind of deregulation, civil asset forfeiture stuff. I mean, state reciprocity with licensing. I mean, it's just thing after thing after thing. Daniel has been at the forefront of that every single time. And another one, maybe not specific to y'all's area, but Andy Holt's one of these guys that's talking about not running again. Andy Holt was the sort of the pioneer, the captain behind the whole red light camera stuff. All right, so we got to figure out what to do with his seat. We're obviously talking about Timothy Hill is running for Representative Rowe's seat. So we're going to have to figure out how to fill his seat. I mean, there's a lot of seats out there. And, Gloria Johnson's seat, again, out y'all's way, Shine, has a great person that's somewhat affiliated with this program. Elaine Davis, obviously, has announced that she's running. Her name is in this article as well. So, I mean, there's a number of races that you want to be able to pay attention to out here, and just keep that in mind as far as it pertains to local politics. That's always where you're going to see change in your life, well more than these federal political issues. But my name is Mr. Henry, signing off for today. Sean, I'll let you leave us with the show. Let's go tomorrow.
All right, everybody, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. This has been Real News.